Hey everyone, Steven here, and today I'm reviewing the ROG Strix XG27ACS monitor. Now, ASUS has the tough brand that usually covers more of the entry and mid-tier level gaming monitors, while ROG tends to be higher end, but this is a shift with the company as they're trying to bring the quality and style of the ROG portion of their brand and bringing it to this mid-tier monitor space. Which I'm really excited about this because for a lot of people, ROG may be out of reach just in terms of cost. And with this being a more affordable monitor, a lot more people are going to have access to the ROG brand when it comes to monitors. But the big question here is, can it deliver on the performance side? Now, with all my monitor reviews, I've covered the specs first before getting into what I like, don't like, and the gray area before wrapping the video up. And with that being said, let's shift over to the specs. The ROG Strix XG27ACS is a 27-inch IPS panel monitor with a 1440p resolution and a 180Hz refresh rate at a 1 millisecond gray-to-gray response time. This has a typical brightness of 350 nits, a peak brightness of 400 nits, and a certified VESA HDR 400. This has a typical contrast ratio of 1000:1 like most IPS panels, and this covers 133% of the sRGB color space and 97% of the DCI P3 color space. For ports, this has two HDMI 2.0, one DP 1.4 with HBR3, a USB-C port that can be used as a display input that also delivers 7.5 watts to charge a smaller device like a phone, and last, this has a headphone jack. For physical adjustments, this has a height adjustment of 120 millimeters. This can swivel 45 degrees to the left and right, tilt forwards 20 degrees and backwards 5 degrees, and this can pivot 90 degrees in either direction. This is VESA mount compatible with a 100mm by 100mm pattern. And something new I want to cover in this video that I haven't done previously is panel certifications, because this does have quite a few, and that's just one of many reasons this is under the ROG portion of the ASUS brand, as those certifications aren't free, but they mean this is a higher quality monitor. So here we have flicker-free, low blue light, VESA adaptive sync display for the 180Hz, VESA display HDR 400, so it does have that peak brightness of the 400 nits certified here, AMD FreeSync, G-Sync compatible, and then the FSC mix, which I believe this one here is in regards to any of the paper material, just meaning that this was ecologically sourced here, so it's something where they are paying attention to the footprint that this has. Inside of the box, you get the panel, monitor arm with stand, DP cable, power cable, warranty card, quick start guide, stickers, and a bag to hold the cables, which is a nice touch. For the warranty, ASUS offers a 3-year warranty on all of their monitors, which I love to see, as not all companies offer that, and this is going to give you just a great peace of mind when it comes to investing into a monitor that you want to last a long time. Last, we have the price, which is very affordable, and I'm surprised ROG was able to bring it in at such a great price. This sits at $299, and considering everything that they've packed in here, I think they've nailed the price and delivered an incredible product, especially considering that 3-year warranty on the monitor that not all companies offer. Next, I just want to note some cool features this has, starting with the slot on the front of the stand where you can actually put your phone. So if you use your phone for any streaming inputs, you run an app for games, or just want to use it as a clock, you have a place to actually set it, and it will charge at that 7.5 watts. On the base of the neck, there's a ring with notches around it. So when you actually rotate this, you can see a more accurate degree of rotation here. Very nice. And then on the top of the monitor arm, you have a 1/4 threaded opening to mount a light, camera, anything that will fit that threading size. You could actually mount it directly to the monitor arm here. So anybody that does streaming and you want that camera like directly from the top down, they actually have this, so you don't need a separate stand or anything. It's just built into this. Very nice touch. Moving on, let's get into the panel menu. The buttons are on the right hand side, and they're an interesting layout because it has a single button you can use to navigate the menu. You have a back or close button, and then 2 shortcut buttons and the power button. You can change these 2 shortcut buttons in the menu, and here in a little bit I'll be covering the display widget app, which lets you adjust the picture presets and crosshair among other things. For the menu itself, you have the following tabs: gaming, image, color, input select, my favorite, and system setup. Starting in the gaming tab, you have variable overdrive, variable refresh rate, extreme low motion blur setup, game plus, game visual, and shadow boost. For variable overdrive, this has 20 total adjustments to it, or steps in this. Usually when I review monitors, most of the time I find they have like 3 to 5. This has 20 total, which is crazy. This is listed as a number where others may say low, medium, high, extreme, or some other variation of that. Now, I did run the on-screen response time testing tool on these in 5 kind of block increments. So I did 0, 5, 10, 15, and 20, but I'm gonna actually look at that and discuss that here in a little bit. Next, you have the variable refresh rate, which you can turn this on or off, and it does say it supports G-Sync compatibility, FreeSync, and Adaptive Sync. For the extreme low motion blur, if variable refresh rate is on, you can only enable extreme low motion blur sync. If you turn off variable refresh rate, you can enable extreme low motion blur, and you will then have the option to adjust the clarity level, which this actually has 5 steps to it, and you can then adjust the position, which this has top, middle, and bottom. I'm going to showcase this and label it right now. This honestly is the first time that I've seen an extreme low motion blur mode that I would actually use. Out of all the monitors I've reviewed, this is one I would actually use this one because I can see the physical difference, and it doesn't dim the monitor to an extreme degree, which usually with other monitors, that's what I found. It just makes it so dim. I was like, I would never actually use this. Here, not only does it actually give a very noticeable improvement, but the fact that it still stays bright and it doesn't just dim this to the point where, to me, again, it feels unusable. I really like this mode, so I have tested this out. Again, one I would actually use here depending on the game. With all of these, you get so many adjustments. Like with this, I've never had the large adjustments that this has on other monitors that I've reviewed. So here you're going to need to spend a little bit of time with this, find your sweet spot, and then depending on the game, again, you may use it in certain games and not in others. But I like the amount of adjustments that this gives you because I've just not seen it on any other monitor. Now I'm showcasing footage of this. This is stills from this. It's not going to translate is the thing, because when we're looking at extreme low motion blur, this is essentially backlight strobing. This is tricking your eye into thinking that there's a difference when there really isn't. And so here the panel isn't getting faster. The clarity is because of this backlight strobing. That being the case, when you adjust this and you are making the adjustments from level 1 to 5 in clarity, what I'm noticing is 1 is going to be the brightest, 5, it gets a little bit more dim at that point, but also at that point, because I'm assuming this is also impacting potentially the speed of the strobing, it doesn't look like you're really getting ghosted anymore. You're almost getting like pixelated ghosting. It's hard to describe. I can't capture it on camera. So as you can see, this on the far left side is 1, and then we're transitioning all the way to 5. It won't pick up on a camera because, again, with that backlight strobing, this is more a visual thing that your eye is picking up. And clarity here is going to be the same thing. When you go from bottom, middle to top, it's shifting where its efforts are, and in that you will notice more ghosting outside of whatever zone you're specifying it should put its efforts. So if I put this to middle, I'm going to notice visually more ghosting on the top and the bottom. Now I can see that with my eye in the UFO test. It's not something, again, that my camera actually picks up. So do keep that in mind. The extreme low motion blur here is backlight strobing, but with all of that being said, visually I am seeing a difference, and it is still the best extreme low motion blur mode I've used on any panel, but it's an optical illusion. So keep that in mind with this mode if you're going to use it. Which begs the question, why did I even showcase footage of me tinkering around in this mode? I just wanted proof that, hey, I did test this mode. I did use it. I actually went through, did the UFO test. I was looking for those differences, and did the clarity actually change when going from 1 to 5 when you're changing the position of that clarity? I did test all these things. I did use it in games, and again, still one of the best extreme low motion blur modes that I've used, but it just doesn't translate to recordings with my camera. After that, you have the Game Plus tab, which has the FPS counter, crosshair, timer, stopwatch, and display alignment. There's some pretty cool things you can adjust with the FPS counter and crosshair specifically, but I won't cover all of those. The one thing I do want to mention though is the crosshair. It has an AI feature. So here it says, with AI powered Game Plus technology, the monitor analyzes the scene on screen in real time and adjusts the Game Plus crosshair to enhance targeting accuracy. And actually I want to cover one other thing here, which is the FPS counter, because you can do this as a number or you can actually do it as a bar graph, and I've seen that before. Here I like just the font that they have because it is the ROG font, and then when you look at the bar graph and it is adjusting in real time, visually it just looks really cool to see. I like that feature. Push in the FPS in Doom so you can see just how it actually responds. Overall, I do like this one compared to other ones that I've seen. It just aesthetically looks cooler. After this, you have the Game Visual tab, which has all of the picture presets. Here you have scenery, racing, cinema, RTS/RPG, FPS, sRGB, MOBA, night vision, and user mode. You keep all of the image and color adjustments with any of these modes, unlike other panels that I've used, which usually those limit the adjustments for their presets, with one exception on this monitor, which is going to be the sRGB mode, which does limit things there. Outside of that, all the other ones you can adjust to your liking. I really like seeing this because it just means more customization when it comes to the monitor. You're not kind of like tied down to how they want the preset to look. After this, you have Shadow Boost, which also isn't available in the sRGB preset, but all the other ones it will have that available. This has off, level 1, level 2, level 3, and then dynamic adjustment. Next, you have the Image tab, which has brightness, contrast, vivid pixel, HDR settings, ASUS Smart Contrast Ratio, aspect control, and blue light filter. For vivid pixel, this scales from 0 to 100 in increments of 10 and enhances outline, sharpness, and color saturation of images and videos. For HDR settings, this has 3 presets: Game, Cinema, and Consoles. Last thing I'll cover from here is the ASUS Smart Contrast Ratio, which you can turn this on or off, and this does a really good job at adjusting the contrast ratio. You basically get a much larger contrast ratio than the standard 1000:1, but keep in mind this is one of those things that it won't be available in the sRGB preset. After this, you have the Color tab, which has display color space, color temperature, saturation, 6-axis saturation, and gamma. For display color space, you have sRGB, DCI P3, and wide gamut. This is on wide gamut for most of the gameplay footage in this video, and that just to me seems like a good middle of the road, but I think they all look really good. Next, you have color temperature, and this ranges from 4000K to 10,000K, or you can actually adjust the RGB settings in the user mode. I'll showcase footage of me kind of cycling through these somewhat quick, and hopefully my camera does a good job in picking this up. But obviously if you're at 4000K, it's more of a warm temperature, and as you get towards 10,000K, it gets more towards a blue temperature. But if you don't like these, you can always, again, just adjust this for the user mode and tweak the RGB settings to your liking. Saturation here goes from 0 to 100%, and this monitor can easily be oversaturated, so I actually have this turned down from the normal 50% that this just comes stock down to 40%. 6-axis saturation allows you to adjust the RGB and CMY color values for more control over the picture. Last, you have gamma, which normally on monitors, they typically have like 3 to 4 options, but here you actually get 5, and it's going to range from 1.8 all the way up to 2.6. Again here, more control over what this picture looks like, which I think most people will really appreciate. So that's it for the main settings that I'll be covering in the panel menu, but I do want to shift over to the display widget center now, which you can download and use in Windows. With this, they're kind of overlaying the ROG look, the Armory Crate look, on top of just their regular ASUS display widget center. So it's kind of like, it looks normal for a second and then it switches over to the different overlay that this has. But here you actually get to adjust not quite everything that you have in the panel menu, but a lot of things that you have in the panel menu. And so this is just a different way of adjusting things if you don't want to use the buttons on the side of the monitor, and it can be potentially a little bit quicker for you on the fly to make these adjustments. Now with this, the tabs that you have are going to be Game Visual, Game Plus, Multi-Screen, KB Hotkey Settings, Screen App Tweaker, and System Settings. I'm not going to cover everything here, but I do want to start on the Game Visual tab, which this has all of the presets that you'll find in the panel menu, so it allows you to adjust that easier than reaching over and using those buttons. But here, this kind of combines the gaming image and color tab from the panel menu, but it does leave out a couple things. So the main things that this does leave out would be the extreme low motion blur setup, variable refresh rate, vivid pixel, and gamma. Now, the things that you do get here though allow plenty of adjustments, and the cool thing is being able to make small tweaks, and then you can hit this compare button to see what those adjustments look like against your original settings. Now this doesn't work across different presets though, so do keep that in mind with this compare feature, but I do like this because you don't really get that when it comes to the panel menu on the monitor. One of the things that I have noticed here though is that when you are switching between these presets, there is a little bit of a delay, and this is a delay that you do not have when you are using the panel menu. Now I'm not going to go over the full list of all the adjustments here, but you can pause this for a second and look at that if you'd like. Moving on though, we have the Game Plus tab, and this has all of the crosshair adjustments, which definitely makes it easier to mess with compared to the panel menu. So I like this versus that, just ease of use. And then after that, you have the multi-screen, which allows you to adjust how the layout is with multiple input sources, which is pretty cool. And then this is going to max out with the 3 inputs that the monitor actually has. After that, we have the KB hotkey settings, and this allows you to set all of the inputs you see on screen to a hotkey for quick access, which takes a little bit of time to set up, but is also a very nice touch if you get that set up just on the ease of use side. And then last, we have the Screen App Tweaker, which allows you to switch the lighting mode automatically based on the app that you're using, meaning you're going to switch the preset to a different preset based on the application. No ability here to import games though, which I thought with this, that's just a missed opportunity, because that would allow for a ton of customization when it comes to gaming. It'd be so nice to just go in here really quick. Hey, I'm going to play this game, maybe even tie it to a hotkey, and then you can just quickly switch this over to whatever preset that you want for that particular game. So next I want to showcase the results of the on-screen response time testing tool here, and I ran this in increments of 5 for the overdrive settings just to see what the difference would be, and it fell in line with what I was expecting here, which is that on a lower overdrive you have no inverse ghosting, but as you increase the overdrive you get noticeable inverse ghosting, so you're going to get overshoot with this. Now my testing tool isn't going to be as good as what I assume ROG is using in-house, so do keep that in mind, but here I'm not seeing the 1 millisecond gray to gray response time. What I am seeing is that you can increase the response time here and get this faster as you increase the overdrive, but then again, that comes with the inverse ghosting. And overall, between 5 and 10, and this is on 10 by default, that's kind of the sweet spot for this monitor in terms of a solid response time, but also no inverse ghosting. Now, I couldn't fit all of these on one slide, so here I actually ended up leaving out the 20 overdrive. That was just showcasing 0, 5, 10, and 15. But I want to go through these individually really quick just to look at what they're showcasing. So with this being 0 on the overdrive, we're seeing the initial time of 8.7 milliseconds, the perceived time being the same here. So that's really what we're showcasing, is about 8.7 milliseconds for the response time. The best here is 4.8. We're noticing that when it's going from black to white, the 0 to the 255, the 255 is where we are lacking in that pure white on the perceived response time diagram. 0 overshoot, so no inverse ghosting here, but again, you're going to see that this is increasing as we increase the overdrive. Shifting over to 5, we see a noticeable difference here. You're seeing that this is getting faster. Kudos to ROG on this. Individually, if you're going from like 1 to 2, 2 to 3, you're not seeing a huge difference, but in these larger leaps, you do see a very noticeable difference. So here, the initial time is 5.64 milliseconds. This did get faster. The best was 3 milliseconds. Still basically 0 overshoot. Yeah, you got the 1 and the 2 there, but it's not anything you would even see. I'm just going to say this is 0 inverse ghosting. You're not going to notice any of it. Are we starting to see the numbers kind of pop up here? Yeah, but it's so minimal, it's negligible at this point. Shifting to 10, again, this is what this is on by default. Now, the initial time, 4.72 milliseconds. The best is 2.8. But we're starting to see that this is lagging again in the transition where we're going from essentially black to white. Noticing on the RGB overshoot, we have more numbers. Here though, it's still to me pretty negligible. This isn't leading to any noticeable inverse ghosting that my eye can pick up. I still find the 5 to 10, like I said earlier, is probably the best range in there that you could find for this. It's still giving you really good speed, but not any inverse ghosting. And now shifting to 15, where we start to see this start to fall apart in the inverse ghosting, the RGB overshoot department, because we are getting faster. Now we're at 3.76 for the initial time here. So this has gotten faster. We went from 8 basically all the way down to 3.76. And then the best here is 2.8. But we have very noticeable inverse ghosting at this point. So now we're dealing in a trade-off. As you're speeding this up, you are getting that RGB overshoot. And that's really going to boil down to if you're okay with that. If you're okay with some inverse ghosting, but you do notice that the panel is faster, this may be a trade-off that you're willing to make. And last we have 20, and this is where things really just fall apart. You're having huge amounts of overshoot here, so you're getting that inverse ghosting. This is very noticeable. In terms of the initial time, 3.62 milliseconds, you really didn't speed up too much from 15. So there is very diminishing returns here. Basically, we're just getting RGB overshoot and not really getting a much faster response time with that trade out. So I like the range that they've given you here. There is a lot that you can adjust, but we do have a very noticeable sweet spot with that 5 to 10, maybe a little bit above that, that you would work within to produce the best results when it comes to response time. Moving on, I did test the color gamut here, but this is where I'm running into a little bit of an issue with trying to check their numbers, because this is giving me color gamut, but they're actually giving color space percentages here. So these are actually different numbers. So when we're looking at the diagram here, I'm using the Spider X from Data Color. we're showing 100% of the sRGB color gamut, 84% of the Adobe RGB color gamut, and then 89% of the DCI P3. I was able to hit 91 time for the DCI P3. Unfortunately, I did not save that, but just running the test over and over and over again, I was just getting 89 pretty consistently, so this is the one that I wanted to use. I do want to note that I checked all of the different color gamut options in the panel menu. So I checked sRGB, then I did DCI P3, and then the wide gamut. This right here is actually with the DCI P3 because this produced the best overall percentages for all of these. But again, looking at the fact that they're giving color space percentages, not color gamut. So let's define that really quick. A color space is a mathematical model that defines how colors are represented in terms of numbers, while a color gamut refers to the entire range of colors that a specific device or system can display, reproduce, or capture. So here, these are different numbers, so I'm kind of comparing apples and oranges when it comes to this. The big thing here that I just wanted to do is showcase different information than what ROG is giving you. They're giving you the color space information. I'm showcasing the color gamut information here. So if you do a job where you need high color accuracy, you need a particular color gamut, a particular color space, hopefully this helps you make a better informed purchasing decision based off of that. Regardless, this is a very vibrant panel. So for most people, I think this is easily going to suit your needs, because if you're needing something that has a particular color gamut or color space, you're out there looking specifically for that. For everybody else, the colors here are solid. It looks incredible in person, so you don't have to worry there. Next, I want to shift into what I like about this monitor, and I'm going to try to make this as concise as I can here. But I do want to note, with all of these reviews, I mentioned I judge this based off of the cost, because you can't judge this in the same way you would judge a monitor that is double, triple, quadruple the price. You judge it based off kind of the price range that it sits in. And with that being said, this is an incredible monitor. ROG has delivered their signature performance in a price range that usually we would see they would go with their Tough brand. But here they brought a lot of extra things that that brand typically doesn't have, that is reserved for the ROG side. And they've now found this really good middle ground. This reminds me of what we've seen with the stepping ladder that Apple does. And here they've done that. They have it where if you're looking at a Tough monitor that is close or similar in specs, why not just potentially pay a little bit extra and get this monitor that has maybe a higher refresh rate, better response time, maybe it's a more vibrant panel than the Tough. So you have more options in their overall lineup. Here, if they didn't deliver on the performance side, I think this would just be a run-of-the-mill monitor, but they do deliver on the performance side in a big way. And when I'm saying performance, I'm talking about what you have on the technical side. So the 180 Hertz, the gray to gray response time, the color space, that's all great, but that's on paper. How does this look in person? This is where it delivers. It looks not only extremely vibrant, but the response time visually looks really tight. Again, we're not seeing huge amounts of ghosting. You have a large amount of customization with that. The extreme low motion blur is actually a version that I would use here that visually does deliver on that end too. So performance with this, top notch. They delivered, like I said, in a very big way. The amount of customization that they gave you, also something reserved for higher end ROG monitors that you don't typically always see on a Tough monitor. They've delivered that here as well. Just looking at the overdrive, the fact that you can go from 0 all the way to 20 and all of those have a difference with them. That is very impressive. But not just on that side, all the different picture presets, all the customization that you can do within that as well. There is a lot here that they've delivered that you don't typically see in this price range at all. They've gone above and beyond. And I do like the use of the display widget here, which allows you to customize certain presets here that you would normally have to do through the in-panel menu. You can use this, you don't have to, but you can use this, potentially save yourself a little bit of time, And I love that compare option where you're looking at, hey, what do these adjustments actually look like against what I had this originally set to. I love the aesthetics here with this. Definitely the ROG brand. We don't get like RGB lighting and things like that, but obviously they do have to reduce costs, but it still has their overall brand look to it. And I like the extras that this features. We're looking at just the little slot for you to put your phone, the numbers, the little notches that you have. So when you rotate this, you can see like, oh, I'm actually at this degree. You have the threading on the top of the stand itself, so you could mount a camera or a light, all these nice extras where it definitely feels like, one, they've listened to the community, but these things again being more reserved for higher tier ROG monitors, they've kept those. They didn't just cut all of those things. They did keep those here, which is a very nice touch. Something I haven't talked about outside of just showing like some of the presets is the HDR mode. This being VESA certified, I like that. It does deliver on HDR. Now we don't have a ton of local dimming zones and all those other features that you would have on a high-end monitor, but the HDR here is actually pretty solid. Not only on PC, I think on consoles really where it shines. So for consoles, for the PlayStation 5 or the Xbox, I've used this mode exclusively. I just think it looks really, really good. HDR on PC is actually one that I would use. A lot of times when it's included on a monitor, especially if it isn't even certified, so you don't know if you're truly going to be consistently hitting the nits that they say that they have. Here, we've had it tested through VESA, so we know we're going to get that consistency, but also it doesn't look bad. And I think that goes back to the customization that we find with this monitor. We get 3 different modes for it. So you have different options when it comes to HDR here, and all of them have a distinct look. And I think they all look really good. So playing on PC with HDR, top-notch experience here. Yes, you're lacking full array local dimming. We don't have any mini LEDs with this. Obviously this isn't an OLED panel, so not every pixel is backlit. You're not gonna get that higher 1,000-2,000 nits with this, but for the cost, this still delivers a solid HDR experience. Next, the USB-C port for connecting a laptop, the ROG Ally, a phone, very nice touch. So we have the input side where we could actually run this as a display input from the laptop from the ROG Ally, very nice, or using this to then charge your phone. So you could actually have it on that little stand portion where you could use it again, like I mentioned earlier, for maybe an app if you're streaming or just a clock, whatever it may be. They have some connection options here for you that usually we just don't find on a monitor in this price range. Now, last thing I want to talk about here, just kind of wrapping it in the like section, I'm trying to showcase as much variation when it comes to the games that I'm playing, showcasing consoles, things like that, so you guys can see just a wide variety, not some short snippet of a game. I want to showcase a wide variety here so you can see what it looks like with an adventure game versus a first-person shooter versus a racing game, whatever it may be. So I have these labeled so you know what the game is and whether or not HDR is on or off. Hopefully that helps just give you a better sense of what this does look like in person. Shifting over now to the dislikes. Very happy here to report I don't have any. There is nothing stand out about this monitor that I just don't like. And that's really, really good. Again, I'm judging it on the price point, but with this, nothing negative that I've found with this. I do have a lot of gray area things though. These are things you may or may not care about. So here, the reason I don't just say it's automatically a negative, because not everybody is going to potentially care about these things. And so this is just, if it is a top tier thing for you, like I have to have this thing you're about to talk about, these are things that I would want you to think about, consider before making a final purchasing decision when it comes to this monitor. Now, starting in this gray area, we don't have any speakers here, and there is no KVM switch. Usually in this price range, we see one or the other. I think what they've done here is they went with the USB Type-C input, being able to use it as a display input over speakers or a KVM switch. You're gonna see, you don't get everything in this price range. They're gonna pick one thing and then go with that. I would have liked to have seen a KVM switch here just for ease of use with just the 3 options that you have to connect, especially when we're looking at the USB-C input for using that with the ROG or a laptop. It would have been nice to run your peripherals through the monitor, making it just a little less cluttered on your desk if you do choose to use a laptop handheld with the monitor. But I do like the fact that they have the USB Type-C input here. So again, just looking at, hey, we can only choose one of these things potentially to bring it in at this price point. I understand it still would have been nice though. Next, the display widget won't allow you to assign presets to games, just apps. I think that is a missed opportunity. I talked about that earlier. Hopefully down the road, we do see an adjustment where they do a software update and they do allow you to do that. It would just make it quicker when it comes to assigning presets to games. And I think that would take this to another level because it already has a ton of customization. Add that to it. And I think you've taken this monitor and you've actually exceeded some top-end monitors when it comes to customization. Next, the base is larger. I like the features, being able to put the phone there. I like the little notches on it so you know how much rotation you're doing. But because it does have that, it just takes up more space. So if you have a smaller desk, that would be something I would want you to be mindful of and consider. Next, the color here. This is like a gunmetal gray. It's a different look. It's not black. I wish we had color options here. I would definitely choose black over the gunmetal. I just would prefer that, but that's not necessarily a deal breaker here. That's more of a preference thing, but just keep in mind, this isn't solid black. This is more of a dark gray. And last here, we have the 7.5 watt power on the USB-C port. I definitely know that that was a compromise that they had to make. Still a bit of a bummer. We're not getting 30, 45, 60, 90 watt power delivery here. So you cannot charge up your ROG Ally. You can't charge your laptop. So you're going to need a different power delivery to that. So now we're running a lot of extra cables with this, where it would have minimized that. But I also know that that comes with a lot more costs in order to actually deliver that. If you're going to try and actually fit it inside of the molding here, there's just more that comes with than me just saying, man, they should just do that. I understand that. Hopefully we get an iteration down the road where it does have that 60, 90 watts of power, maybe that KVM switch. Then I think you've rounded this out. You've taken away a lot of things that people may want, and maybe their excuse is, hey, it doesn't have that thing, and you've really taken that away. So you've delivered top-notch performance, and any of those extra features that they may want are there. Then it's just a win-win. So that is going to be it for this review. ROG has delivered an incredible product, an incredible price tag. Couldn't be happier with this monitor. Do consider the things I talked about with the gray area. I don't think any of those are deal breakers necessarily, but you do want to weigh that against, maybe you are looking at other options that have those features, but do they have this level of performance? That would be the number one thing to look at and to consider before making your final purchasing decision. I will have a link for this in the description if you want to pick it up. If you have any questions about this, let me know in the comment section. I will make sure to answer that for you there. They do have a 4K version of this. I will be hopefully getting that in here in the next handful of weeks or months, and I will do a review on that as well and let you guys know what the difference is between the two variations outside of just potentially resolution. But does that resolution impact performance potentially? That's something to consider. Until then, if you like the video, hit the like button for me as it helps the channel out. If you want to continue to follow along with all my content, hit the subscribe button for me. And as always, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.